On this week's Mixed and Mastered, we're joined by Angelique Miles. Angelique has published some of the biggest names in music, including Missy Elliott, Timbaland, Busta Rhymes, and Old Dirty Bastard. Since then, Angelique has reinvented herself as a leading beauty and wellness influencer. Angelique tells us her journey of resilience and reinvention. It's never too late to rewrite your story. This is Mixed and Mastered with Angelique Miles. Welcome to Mixed and Mastered, the podcast where the stories of the music industry come to life. I'm Jeffrey Sledge, bringing you real conversations with the people who have shaped the sound of music. We're pulling back the curtain on what it takes to make it in the music business. These are the stories you won't hear anywhere else, told by the people who live them. This is Mixed and Mastered. Mixed and Mastered with Angelique Miles, the infamous Angelique Miles. How are you, Angelique?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. You're looking good.
Thank you.
Like you smell good.
I do. I always smell good. Even if I'm going to the gym, I spritz on something clean.
Yes. People funky in the gym is nasty. Yeah, funky people in the gym is nasty. It's like...
Well, I go to like this private studio, so that doesn't happen too often, but there are some stinky people in the other gym I go to.
We're going to get to that. We're going to start from the beginning. So, born and raised in Queens, New York.
That's
South
right.
Side, to be exact. South Side.
No.
Oh, you're not?
Laurelton. I'm not from the South Side.
Okay, excuse me. My fault.
I'm from a nice community. Not that the South Side isn't, but I live closer to the borderline. I grew up close to the borderline of Nassau County.
Okay, so tell me about that. Tell me about growing up in Queens.
Growing up in Queens, I had a great experience growing up in Queens. It was, I grew up in the 70s there. It was not just Laurelton, but Jamaica, Queens in general was very Afro, like it was very Black Power time going on. So my best friend's big sister had us doing plays for block parties, like reciting poetry and wearing African garb and learning Swahili. And we even had like a Laurelton Researchers Club where we researched the history of where we lived.
Okay.
But my friend's older sister did that for us. It was like a group called the Laurelton Researchers Club. So we found out that Laurelton was named for the laurel bush. And at the end, at that time, there were still some Jewish people living in the neighborhood. So we interviewed them and they were telling us like Merrick used to be a stream. And so, I had a great childhood.
That's good.
Growing up in Queens, I went to Catholic school. So I didn't really get to meet a lot of people in the neighborhood because I went to Catholic school. I didn't go to the school around the corner. But my mother was a teacher at August Martin High School. A lot of people knew her. But no, I had a great childhood.
So tell me about your kind of first clicks that you were a music lover.
I became a music lover because my uncles, both of them, had huge record collections. So my uncle Bernard came to live with us. Well, my father was from D.C., so I used to travel to D.C. a lot. My uncle there had a huge record collection. And then one of my uncles, my father's other brother, came to live with us for a while, and he brought his record collection with him. So I would sit in the living room, and that's where the record player was, and listen to music with him. And he was a big Earth, Wind, and Fire fan, and Maze, and Parliament, like before it was Parliament Funkadelic. And I used to read the liner notes, and it was so funny because I just saw a social media post yesterday that was talking about Skip Scarborough, and I specifically Skip Scarborough's name always stuck out to me as a kid because I guess because Skip, I don't know, but to this day, Earth, Wind, and Fire is my favorite band because my uncle was a huge Earth, Wind, and Fire fan, and I remember particularly this one time I loved Heatwave's Boogie Nights. So I would listen to the radio all day waiting for Boogie Nights to come on. And my mother got sick of it, so she finally bought me the album. Either she bought me out the album or one of my brother did. Somebody bought me the album. And my uncle worked nights, so I went to school. I came home, and he was like, "Always and Forever is the cut." I was like, "Okay," but to this day, I'm like, "Wow, he knew."
He knew.
Always Forever was the cut.
It
I
still
like
is.
Boogie Nights. It still is the cut. But then my other uncle in DC, he had a different kind of collection. So I used to listen to whenever we visited my grandparents. He lived with my grandparents. I would just lock myself in his room.
Mm-hmm.
He was never home, and just listen to his music. And I got into Patti LaBelle
Okay.
and singers like that through my other uncle's record collection.
Okay. So I know that you're also a big club music fan and was on the club scene. Did this happen before you went to when it went away to school, or after you came back, or was it like during?
Well, I like club music, but also I'll take it back. I love go-go because I was in
Or
DC
DC?
a lot,
Mm-hmm.
traveling to see my grandparents, and my god sister would have me with her at Howard Theater, the Panorama Room, and I loved go-go during my high school years. I had like the Rare Essence records and EU. I brought all that stuff in DC and brought it back home. I love, love, love go-go. I think I got into club music in college because that's when I started going to the Paradise Garage,
Okay.
like 1985, and I was a
Okay.
freshman at Hampton. So that got me into club music, just being in that environment. And I think the radio must have been playing some of it
Yeah. New
at
York
that
radio
time.
was playing a lot of it. Yeah.
Friday and Saturday nights was
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Magic and Red Alert, of course. But
Mm-hmm.
then there was some kind of time that club music came on too, like
Yeah.
Timmy Regisford and
Especially on BLS. Yeah. They
yeah.
played it a
So
lot. Mm-hmm.
and as young as 15, I went to clubs. Like back then, you could sneak into a club with fake ID.
Yeah. Plus, you're kind of tall, so
Yeah, so like my older brother's girlfriend would sneak me in with her to Justine's and stuff like that. So I got into club music that way, but mainly going to the Paradise Garage.
Yeah. So wait. Before we get deep into that, tell me about your experience at Hampton University.
Hampton, Hampton was like a kind of a culture shock for me because I went to an all-girl, predominantly white Catholic high school.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't go to high school with boys. So when I got to Hampton, it was,
You went crazy.
of course, it was black college, boys.
Yeah.
But, to their credit, Hampton had us for the first 6 weeks, first 6 weeks, you were on a curfew.
Really?
Like, you couldn't just be out in the street. So, yeah, we had I think it was 12 o'clock curfew. So, but we had a curfew. You had to be in the room by a certain time.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah. And if you wanted to go away for the weekend or go, you had to sign out. So I used to sign out and
just
go
be outside.
I would go stay with like my older friends in their dorm.
Yeah.
But Hampton was great because I got to connect with, I don't know, growing up in Queens, you just see one kind of person. You know what I mean? And at Hampton, I saw all kinds of black people, affluent black people who got there the same way I did, people who got there other ways, just people from all walks of life, but all different. And I'm very grateful that I was able to experience that. Very grateful that I was able to experience it. HBCU like Hampton.
Mm-hmm.
It was a great experience.
I always tell people, like, because I went to Morgan, another black college, and I always tell people, it's kind of same with you. Like when I went to Morgan, I was like, "Oh, we all black, but we ain't all the same."
Right? No,
because people from Philly are way different than the people from Chicago, and the people from DC are way different than the people from New York, and so on and so on. It's all this. It was a culture shock kind of thing, and some people have had mad money. Some people were really struggling. Some people were middle class, kind of just making a way, and it was just this melting pot of blackness, and I loved that.
And it was so, because we used to go to people's houses on the weekends. Like it would just be like, oh yeah, a group of us would go and stay at, you know, my friend Ernest. We used to go to his house all the time. He was from Mitchellville, Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first time I ever heard of Mitchellville.
Mm-hmm.
But we used to just go to his house for the weekend. His mom would cook breakfast for us. We would go party. We would just, you know, and they lived, you know, his family was very successful.
Yeah, Mitchellville's nice. That's where the company's from, Mitchellville. Yep.
Yeah, and you know, we're friends to this day. And his younger sister and I are friends, and the whole family went to Hampton basically.
Mm.
And but yeah, things like that. And people would come to my house for the weekend too. My mother would wake up and there'd be like seven of us on the floor.
Yeah.
In the living room.
Kind of laid out.
But I remember just going to people's houses and like, wow, people live like this. This is wild.
Yeah. Black people like living like really well, you know? So when did you realize that, when did you want to make music a career, and when did you realize that was possible? How did you realize that was possible?
Okay. This is a funny story because my friend Terry Haskins, who also went to Hampton, we were friends at the time, and still friends. But I was working at Shearson Lehman Hutton on the 102nd floor of World Trade Center.
Really?
And I was like, this cannot be life.
So it was too cold, too boring.
What? It took an hour and a half to get to Wall Street from Queens, and I had to be at work at 8:30 in the morning. This is the late 80s, and the boss, the head of mutual funds at the time, did not want women wearing pants to work.
Wow.
That's how crazy it was. I forget his
Remember
name.
that movie was out. What was the movie?
Wall Street.
No,
it was
that
just like
one with what's the one with the women? Oh, fuck.
Working Girl.
Working Girl. Exactly. Yeah, that was like real life. You know what I'm saying?
I was wearing my
life.
sneakers to work with the skirts and all that
9
stuff.
to 5 is the movie I was talking about, but same kind of thing.
Working Girl is the same thing with Melanie Griffith.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this can't be life. Like, this is not how I want to live my life. So I just quit one day.
Really?
And my mother was just like, how are you just going to quit your job? I was like, I'll temp. Because I was.
How you gonna quit that good job?
Right. Well, I was like, you're not gonna just lay up here and not work. I was like, the fact that she even thought I would do that was crazy to me, because I was like, I like money, I like hanging out. Like, there's no way I'm not working.
Yeah.
So, but I was like, I'm gonna take a week or so, and then I'm gonna start going out to these temp agencies, and that's what I did. I went to, because I typed really fast. Like, my mother made me learn how to type, and I took typing in high school, like all girl Catholic high schools, they taught you to type. So I would just go around the temp agencies. I type like 80 words per minute. I get hired for reception jobs or secretary jobs, just to, you know, and it was a great experience, because I got to work all over the city, meet all kinds of people. And one day they sent me to Capitol Records, A&R department. That's how I got into business. But it was a mission. I manifested it, because after I talked to Terry, when I was working at Shearson Lehman Hutton, you know, you have a regular job. You get off Christmas Day, but then you got to go to work the next day.
Mm-hmm.
So I was talking to Terry on Christmas Day, and I was like, yeah, so we got to go to work tomorrow. She's like, oh, no. She worked at RCA.
Okay.
And I forget who she worked with. She was assisting someone. And she said, oh, no, the whole industry has off for the week. Like, we have off from Christmas to... I was like, I need to be in that industry. I was like, I really need to be in that business. I was like, that's great. Like, I don't have to work. You don't have to go work. So I was like, I should be in the music industry. I love music. I don't know what I want to do in the music industry, but I know I want to be in it. Mm-hmm. And I remember interviewing with Laverne Perry. I thought maybe I should go, you know, be a publicist. If she had hired me, I would have become a publicist. Wow. But because I went to Capitol Records A&R, and I worked with Josh Deutsch for a couple of days, people were calling like full force, like Bo Legaloo and Freddie Jackson. Yeah. Those are the big people at Capitol at the time. And Suzanne Baptiste was working with Kenny Ortiz right across from me. Okay. And I told her, I was like, well, I really want to work in the industry. Do you know of any available positions? She was like, well, Doreen Alexander upstairs at EMI is looking for an assistant. Give me your resume and I'll give it to him. And I did, and I got the job. That's how I got. So I worked for an A&R person. That's why I became an A&R person, I think. Had
So
I
who
been
was
working
some of the first
publicly,
acts you worked with?
hmm?
Who were some of the first acts you worked with?
Who did Dwayne have? It was a group, he told UBC or something like that. They weren't successful.
Okay.
He had taken over Scott Folks' position,
Okay.
but we had jazz. That's what we had, jazz.
Oh,
That's how I met
Jay-Z
Jay.
Jazz.
That's how I met Jay-Z back in the
Okay.
day, because he used to come up with jazz. They had Hawaiian
Okay.
Sophie. So I guess that was the most successful. But at EMI, there was like Red Hot Chili Peppers, EMF, Unbelievable. Um, Jerry, what was Jerry's last name? Was the head of A&R, black guy. And that's when Varnell Johnson was there too. Glenise Coleman,
Mm-hmm.
people like that. And that was a great experience too. My first experience was I worked for good people. Dwayne Alexander was very good to me, and he had a special thing. He like, these are the publishing divas. So if Rochelle Fields, Jody Gerson, or Brenda Andrews calls, get me on the phone. Like just find me. I was like, publishing divas. Who are these people? So yeah, that was my first job in the business,
How
and
long were you there?
I think about a year or so. I think they let Dwayne go because that's
Okay.
how, there was a new regime, but
Mm-hmm.
they let go the head of A&R, so everybody had to go. Then I worked for Kimberly Thornton at Busted Records, which was Hammer's label.
Mm-hmm.
And I was pregnant at that time. So throughout my pregnancy, I worked for Busted. Then after I had my son, Paris was over at Epic. So I went to Epic and worked with Paris Davis, who signed Groove Theory, and Terry and Monica, which is a
Yes.
whole other story. But
Yeah.
his main signing was Groove Theory.
So wait, before we go, how was it working with Hammer's people? Was Hammer, he was
They were
Can't
based
Touch
in
This and all that was
Oakland.
out at the time?
What's that?
Can't Touch This and all that was out at the
Yeah, no,
time?
he was huge. He was
Okay.
selling 10 million records a pop.
Wow.
He was huge, huge, huge. It was like him and Garth Brooks would be vying for the #1 album in the country at the time, and
Wow.
everybody they were both selling like tens of millions. It was crazy numbers back then,
Uh-huh.
and it wasn't like it was very much a satellite office experience. We worked in the Capitol offices, so it's almost still like I worked at Capitol because it was
Okay.
like specifically the Blue Note offices, and Bruce Lundvall was still there
Bruce
at the time. Like
Lundvall,
some of the
yeah.
old school guys were still
Yeah.
around, and yeah. So that after I had my son, a few months later, I worked at Epic.
And how was that?
That was great. That's where I met the majority of connections that I would use throughout my publishing career. Because Vivian worked there, Vivian
Mm-hmm.
Scott True,
Vim
who's
was on the show.
I love Vivian, and I'll tell you why
Mm-hmm.
in a few.
Mm-hmm.
But Vivian, Polly Anthony, Hank Caldwell was there. It was still running black. There was still black
Black
music
Music
department
Division.
back then.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like Hank Caldwell. Um, that's where I met. Like Gwen Niles and I both went to Hampton at different times, but I met Gwen when she was working with Vivian there,
Okay.
and just a handful of good people. And that's back then. You recall they had parties at the opening of an envelope. Like it didn't matter what was happening, who you were, new artists,
And
album release
big parties, like big lavish parties, like
big lavish album release parties with open
yep,
bars and food.
yep.
So as an assistant, I would go to all the parties,
Mm-hmm.
every album release party I was going to, and you got to
Mm-hmm.
meet the other assistants and other executives, and yeah, I went to everything.
So what artists did you work with at Epic when you were there?
At Epic Groove Theory,
Okay.
And
You have
he
any
also
stories
saw
about them?
Terry and Monica. But that album didn't do well. But Groove Theory was huge, so
Yeah.
it took a while to get that album done. But through Paris, I met Hiram Hicks. I met Cassandra Mills. I met so many people working with
Hmm.
Paris.
So, you have any crazy, crazy air quotes groove theory stories that you wanted that you would willing to be talk
Nothing
about?
crazy. Nothing
Okay.
crazy.
Okay.
Nothing crazy. Bryce and I were from the same neighborhood, and
Hmm.
Amel she was very sweet, breath of fresh air, pretty. Not that I recall, nothing crazy, but Paris was very, um, perfectionist about certain. I remember being in the studio, and he's like, "There's just something that's not right." I just remember that, but nothing crazy.
Yeah. Okay.
Nothing crazy.
Okay. So after Epic, what happened next? Where'd you go next?
Well, at Epic, that's when I'd had my son by this time, and I was having issues with my son's father. It was about money. So I
Hmm.
think I was at not I think I was at my desk crying. And Vivian walks by and she was like, "Why are you crying? You okay?" I was like, I told her what was happening. She was like, "You know what? You need your own job, so you don't have to worry about whether your son's father gives the money on time or whatever." So she's like, "Give me your resume and I'll give it to Rochelle Fields. Jocelyn Cooper is leaving Warner Chappell and opening her own company, Midnight Music.
Hmm.
So give me your resume and I'll give it to Rochelle." And the rest is history.
And so that's when you turned from A&R into publishing.
Yes. I had no
So,
idea what publishing was like that, except for what I heard from Dwayne. So I think I'd met Rochelle back then or Brenda Andrews back then.
mhm.
But he was like the like, actually, I'd interviewed for another job. I'd interviewed for the MCA Music publishing job because Tita Gray, I think, was leaving. Did she work at MCA Music?
I don't remember.
Carol Ware, Leon Ware's wife, used to
Okay.
head the publishing at MCA Music, and I interviewed with her, and she didn't think I was ready.
Ah,
But a year later, I got to, it was between me and Francesca Sparrow.
really?
Yeah,
That's
it was between me and
that's
Francesca
interesting.
Sparrow.
So, how did you get your crash course in publishing? Because publishing and A&R, publishing and the music side in general are just so different.
The
People
Donald
don't really
Passman book.
you do. Oh, so you read the book?
I read the Donald Passman book
Oh,
and just on the job training. But I feel like I was blessed and had good luck because they gave me Sammy Kahn's old office. Do you know who Sammy Kahn is?
mm-mm, mm-mm.
Sammy Kahn is a writer who wrote standards like, let me see, because I always forget. Not Take Me Out to the Ball Game, but songs like that.
So he was like a brill building kind of guy.
He was a Brill building kind of guy, but wrote
Okay.
some, and they had a big um, Broadway catalog. And so Julie Stein, this guy Julie Stein, was still there. And I only learned about these people um, working there because I didn't know.
Mhm.
But let me see.
And then where you looking for the people who are listening, the Brill Building was this building in the Times Square area. I can't remember. It's in the 40s, and they had all these like little offices with like pianos in them, and they had all these writers that they would hire and come
Mhm.
and all day people would write songs, write songs, write songs, write songs, and a lot of these songs, like I said, became standards and classic like George Gershwin type records and Carole
Right.
King, and these people would just pump out. That was their job, to pump out songs. They
Right.
did stuff for TV shows, for movies, obviously for records. If you look on a lot of those old records in the 50s and 60s, those are all Brill building records, and became this massive publishing warehouse, basically.
Yep. I'm looking it
Mhm.
up, and he and Julie Stein wrote "Let It Snow, Let It Snow, Let It Snow."
Damn.
Yeah, he wrote songs like that, and they
So
gave me his.
they've done
He
well.
passed away that January 1993. I
Uh-huh.
started that job in April of 1993, and they gave me his office.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I think that's part of the reason why I had like just, you know, a great career, a great tenure
You
at
had, you
Warner
had, you had,
Chappell.
you had good mojo coming out of that office.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
back then they gave you a furniture budget, like go buy furniture, your own furniture for your office. Yeah.
Yeah,
Furniture
that's over with.
budget.
That shit's over with.
Furniture budget, parking budget in the contract. Actually, did I have a contract yet? No. But I still
Okay.
drove into work every day.
Okay. So
Um,
who are some of the people you started working with when you did publishing?
when I got there, before I signed anything, I worked with Barry Eastman, who did all the Freddie
Okay.
Jackson stuff, Eddie
Hmm.
F. and Untouchables.
Wow.
Jocelyn had signed them. And also Bernard Bell, who
Okay.
wrote all the stuff with Teddy Riley,
Mm-hmm.
Skeff Anselm,
Oh,
Eric
Scott for
Stadler,
Tribe. Okay.
From Bomb Squad.
Yep.
Um, and then that's all I remember. I'm sure there were more. There was also a woman who worked there for a little while named Kat Jackson, who
I
worked
remember Cat
for.
Jackson.
You remember Kat Jackson?
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
worked for Prince's public because Prince was published by Warner Chappell. So was Michael Jackson. At the time, Warner Chappell had the Happy Birthday song before it went back into public domain.
Yeah.
It was crazy. James Brown was there. In fact, I have a picture with James Brown kissed me on the cheek because he used to come up to the office. These people would come up to the office. The James Brown catalog was there. Dr. Dre was there. So it was an easy sell to be at Warner Chappell Music. It was like one of the Rolls Royces of
Yeah.
the music publishing
So people were
business.
more calling you than you were calling
Yeah, it was a
them.
very high profile position. So that's how I got to know the attorneys because they were calling me. The attorneys and managers, they called Warner Chappell.
Wow.
At the time, there weren't so many publishing companies as there are now. There were some big independents, but not like
Not like that.
not
So
like there are now.
did you ever get to meet Michael or Prince?
I did meet Michael later. I
Okay.
met Michael. Me and Big John met Michael because Rodney was in the studio with him, even though Rodney had signed to EMI.
Rodney Jerkins.
Yes, Rodney Jerkins. And we were at a Jay-Z video shoot.
Okay.
And I think Rodney called John. They were like, come to the studio now.
Hmm.
So I was like, yeah, it was crazy. So we went to Sony Studios. He was there. He had the thing on his nose. He had all these like Disney. I guess he had gone to the Disney store. So and his kids were young, so he had all these stuffed animals hanging from the ceiling, and like popcorn machine, and he had like the whole. You remember they had that huge lounge at Sony Studios, but it was like he had like I think they were separated into different rooms.
Hmm.
He had the whole thing.
Wow.
And he had us sit down. Well, I had on heels that night. So he looked at me and Jonathan Platt, who's the CEO of Sony Music
Yeah.
Publishing now, and said, wow, you guys are tall. John is 6'6". I was probably 6'1" in these heels. And we sat down with him and he watched like a Frazier Ali fight. And he was like a big Ali fan. And so he's going to saying Ali's he's a dancer or something like that. He just kept praising Ali.
Mm.
So I'm just sitting there, me and John just sitting there like, this is Michael Jackson.
Yeah, you're Michael Jackson.
Because of all the people, that I'd met at the time in the industry, because you meet a little bit of everybody, especially one thing I could say about Warner Chappell, I was in so many rooms, more rooms that I ever would have been in working in records. They had me at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame dinners when they were really small. Like it would be in like a ballroom. You could just walk up to people. I remember walking up to Diane Carroll and introducing myself. Like you would just
Mhm.
go up to people and introduce yourself.
I remember those
Um,
small rock and roll Hall of Fame. Yeah,
yeah,
in
it
the
was a
ballroom.
small thing. It wasn't a
I think it was
standing
the
thing.
Hilton Hotel or something. Like,
Yeah, it was
yeah.
at the Hilton Hotel.
Mhm. Mhm.
That and like the other galas where they were much smaller then than they are now. So you
Mhm.
really got to meet people.
Yeah.
And Warner Chappell would have me in those rooms. Um, so I've met a lot of people. Um, Tony Bennett used to come up to the office. I've met a lot of people, but Michael Jackson's the only one I was starstruck by
Mm.
because I loved him since I was 6.
Of
You know what I
course.
mean? So
Of
I
course.
remember calling my parents like, Mom, Dad, I just met Michael Jackson. Like that. He was the only person I've ever
You were
felt that
like
about meeting.
took your
And we'll be
breath
right
away
back.
kind of thing.
Ready to launch
Yeah.
your podcast? Merrick Studios offers comprehensive services from concept development and seamless production to strategic marketing and monetization. Let your story take the mic. Visit merrickcreative.com/studios and let's get to work.
Master the art of lyricism with Pendulum Mink, the first school for rap. Learn elite techniques through immersive lessons, real-world exercises, and guidance from hip-hop icons. This is where MCs sharpen their skills and glow boldly on the mic. Ready to level up? Visit pendulummink.com and start your journey today.
And now, back to our show.
Now, how long did you work at Warner Chappell?
I worked there from 1993 to 2000. I don't know. It felt like 10 years.
Okay.
It felt like 10 years. It was only 6 years from
Okay.
1993 that I left. And
And where'd you go after that?
I went to Universal. Jocelyn Cooper hired me at Universal to do A&R. And it was a culture shock. I left for the money. In retrospect, I shouldn't have.
Tell me why.
Because records is a hectic job. And have like a weekly report card. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it was just so much more pressure than publishing was.
Yeah.
And I was working at Warner Chappell spoiled me. And so they used to they gave me autonomy at Warner Chappell. Like I would go to LA, and it might sound vapid, but I was able to stay at like the Peninsula every time.
Yeah, the nice hotels and stuff. Yeah.
And I remember the first time I went to LA. I'm only 26 years old, and I went to, I think it was like the Soul Train Awards or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to the office on Santa Monica, and she was like, my boss was like, "Where are you staying?" I was like, "I'm staying at the Hotel Nico." I was so excited to stay at the Nico.
Nico used to be hot.
She was like, "What? Why didn't you stay at the Four Seasons of the Peninsula?" I never stayed at the Nico again.
Wow. They're like, why are you not staying at the Superfly shit? Like, what are you
She's
doing?
like, "Why are you staying there? Why don't you stay at the Four Seasons of the Peninsula?" I was like, enough said.
Exactly. Oh, really? Okay.
I didn't know it was like that. So when I went to Universal, they hired me as a VP. I thought I was just going to go to Peninsula. They were like, "You can't stay at the Peninsula."
Yeah.
And I was like, "What?" They were like, "You can stay at the Four Seasons." Like, okay.
Oh, I'll slum it.
They were like, because Monty and Doug stayed there, so I couldn't stay there.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't stay at the same place
with the
big
presidents and stuff. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
But I must say, before I got to Universal, I was also married to a man in the business.
Yeah.
So, I stayed at the Peninsula on my own and with him.
Yeah.
And it was a, rude awakening to not be able to just roll like I wanted to roll.
So you didn't like the record side too much.
I hated it.
Really? Who'd you work with while you were there? What artists?
DJ Rogers.
Okay.
That's all I can remember. I'm sure I worked with other people, but I like blacked out that. I'm like, let me forget about that. I had so much going on in my life in general when I was at Universal, but I met some great people. Gene Riggins was running Black music at the time. Dino DeValier, who signed Cash Money, was next door to me. Kevin, what was Kevin's last name? Kevin Hershey? He signed Nelly. So Nelly was there at the time. And Lou Tucker was there at the time. Like we had, Universal. That's why I met Wardell. Wardell Malloy, who's at
Okay.
EMI now. Wardell was my assistant. And
Wow.
yeah, met some great. Wendy Washington was there at the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Jackie Reinhardt.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I met some good people, but I didn't like working in
Okay.
records at all.
So what happened after that?
I got let go from that. And then I went to EMI like a year later. I didn't like EMI though.
Okay. So tell me about your EMI experience.
um, it was the New York office, so it's like I worked with Evan Lamberg, and it was just a different. Like I said, Warner Chappell really spoiled me. Like I was the person, like the person in the New York office, and I kind of built the R&B stuff there from
Mm-hmm.
along with Denise Weathersby in LA. I kind of built that. Like I got in there and I signed Tim and Missy and Junior Mafia and Busta Rhymes and ODB. Like as far as '90s signings, I really I built that.
Mm-hmm.
When I got to EMI, it's already built. Like there's already a system. It was Big John and Tubby. And, they already had their own established way of working, and I don't think there was like really room for me
I
there.
got you.
Room for
I got
someone
you.
like it kind of neutralized me, if
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah. So wait, so let's go back a little bit because I didn't ask you this. So tell me about when you signed Missy. Like, tell me the story of that, and tell me the story of when you signed Busta.
Tim and Missy, Louise West is my girl,
Mm-hmm.
and Louise brought me other things too, but Tim and Missy are the most notable. I also signed Anthony Hamilton
Okay.
through Louise. She'd been telling me about Tim for a while because they were up in Rochester working with Devontae.
Mm-hmm.
And Missy had kind of started making a name for herself because she'd written for 702, and she did the thing with Gina Thompson. So
Mm-hmm.
she was already making a name for herself. But she finally brought Tim to me. It must have been '96. And Darryl Williams was in my office at the time. I tease him about this to this day because Darryl Williams was an A&R guy who was huge at the time because he signed Brandy and he signed DJ.
Yep.
So he was in my office and she brings Tim. He was very shy at the time. And she's like, well, they did most of the Aaliyah album, but Barry Hankerson won't give us the songs to play. But
It
he can
sounds
play
like Barry.
right. But he was able to play Pony for me. That's the only thing he played. And I was like, I'm signing him right now. And I asked Daryl. I was like, Daryl, what do you think? He was like, it's just all right. I was like, you know what? Thank God I trusted my own ears.
Yeah.
And didn't trust, I trusted my own ears.
Yeah.
So they were like almost like a package deal. And they were admin deals. And no one was doing admin deals at the time. If you didn't do co-publishing deals, you weren't doing them. But Louise insisted they do admin deals.
Okay.
And they were...
explain to people real quick what an admin deal is.
An admin deal is you're not giving up control of your publishing. You're keeping 80... It's called an 80-20 deal, where you're keeping 80% of your publishing and you're paying 20% for administration.
Okay.
So Warner Chappell would administer their publishing, that's licensing and royalties and all that stuff, for that fee. So there was a way that they would have worked. Ed Pearson was the head of business affairs at the time, because there was only, and I don't remember the technicality, but there was something technical that had to happen for them to be included in the award, like the Billboard Awards and stuff like that. But they worked it out. But people talked about that for a while. Like, that's just an admin deal. It's just an admin deal. It was like, no, it's activity. So right after I signed them, If Your Girl Only Knew came out. And this
Wow.
is history. Like it was like it didn't stop after that.
Yeah, just one
Because
one
not
after
only
the other
that,
after the other.
I had Terry Robinson too. Terry Robinson was
She
huge.
wrote a lot.
And I signed Terry as a group with Monica. That was actually my first signing.
Okay.
I signed Terry and Monica as soon as I got to Warner Chappell. And I expected the album to do well because, Patterson signed Groove Theory. So I'm like, oh, it's going to do. And the album sounded good. It wasn't like it was a bad album, but it tanked. So and that's the other good thing about publishing. You can sign something that tanks and nobody's looking at you crazy because there are other ways for the people write. There's other ways for them to make money.
Mm-hmm.
So Terry calls me one day and she's like, I'm writing with Heavy for these kids. And I'm like, okay, whatever, like as long as you're writing.
Yeah.
And the kids turned out to be Soul For Real. And Candy Rain came out. That was my first top 10 pop hit.
Wow.
And I remember being in a car service. I was in Brooklyn for some reason. And these kids were walking down the street. It was like 10 of them. And they were all singing Candy Rain.
And then you knew you had a hit.
So that was my first one. And my bosses didn't even realize it. I had to call them and tell them. I was like, Terry Robinson has the top 10 pop hit. And they were like, what? And so she was like, after that, it was like, Can't You See, The Total. She had a bunch of hits. Terry's like one of the most unsung songwriters to me because she's done so much, but nobody ever
mentions her name.
Mm-hmm. She's written a lot.
Tell me the Busta story.
Busta was managed by Chris and Mona.
Mm-hmm.
But I had an advantage because he was signed to Elektra and I was with Warner Chappell. So I think
You're the inside track.
I think he got it was, like I said, it's all so many years ago that I don't know the policies of everything. But there was an advantage to Warner artists being signed to Warner Chappell. And I forget what it was, but we must have given them a better rate or something like that.
Yeah.
And it was Tim Mandelbaum, I think, who was the attorney.
Okay.
But I went through, the normal negotiating, but Busta was always kind and nice and respectful.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't difficult. It wasn't a difficult signing. Okay. I've had some, deals where it's like going back and forth and
what was your most difficult signing?
Probably no one that was really worth all that. I don't remember. I probably went back and forth with Mac 10 a lot. I don't know. Stevie J might have given us a run. I signed Stevie J as well. We didn't have an issue with Junior Mafia.
Okay.
Because they were signed to Warner.
Yeah, Atlantic. Yeah.
They were signed to Atlantic. Busta was signed to Elektra. ODB was signed to Elektra. Did ODB through Tim Mandelbaum as well. Mm-hmm. It was really about the relationship with the attorneys.
Yes.
And Tim Mandelbaum had a great relationship with Warner Chappell.
Okay.
So I think that's why that happened. Like I said, it really made a difference that I was at that kind of company.
Yeah, you were there.
That was at a high profile company like that. So in retrospect, as things got tougher for me years down the line, that was like the easiest success I ever had.
So tell me one, without incriminating people, tell me one spicy, I won't say crazy, I'll say spicy Warner Chappell story. Oh, or one spicy story from that era.
Spicy? What do you mean?
Like, we was out at this thing and this is something got crazy or blah blah blah. Without ruin somebody's life. I'm not saying to gossip people, just kind of, it was so much happening during that era, especially like you said, we were going out so much and we're seeing so many people and we're traveling, and so you kind of see stuff,
I won't call this story spicy, but it's funny because John Tita, my old boss, recently passed away.
Okay.
And he was the easiest boss to work for because we were both late all the time. I get it. John be in later than me. He was like a late guy. We were both late people, but we stayed late and we did a lot of deals together. He was really good at his job. He was a charmer. We used to have to go to Broadway events because, like I said, Julie's time was either alive or he just passed away too. But there was a Broadway something in his honor that everybody from Warner Chappell had to go to. So we're there in the audience, and people are coming up on the stage that are people going crazy for, and we don't know who they are. Sorry, the plug is in. We're like, who are these people? The only people we knew were who was George Clooney's aunt?
Rosemary Clooney.
Rosemary Clooney. I think Taylor Dane must have done something on Broadway back then. There were like two. Tony Randall was still alive. He was there. Everyone else, they were like doing standing ovations for, going crazy. We were like, who are these people? So John whispers over to me. He leans over, whispers to me. He's like, this is what it feels like to be on another planet. I thought it was so funny at the time. You had to be there.
Yeah.
But he was a great boss. Like we were both Godfather fans, and now they just had the 50th anniversary. For the 25th anniversary, they were having a special showing at the Ziegfeld Theater, which is now Ballroom. But it was right around the corner because we were at 1290. So we took off for lunch and went to go see The Godfather.
Wow.
He was that kind of boss.
That's dope. Yeah.
So I just have good memory. I have good memories. Nothing really scandalous, unfortunately. I'm sure there were things that happened.
Yeah, whatever.
But nothing scandalous. I remember when we had a company meeting in Boca, and they were talking about the internet. Like the internet wasn't a thing yet. That's how long ago this was. And they were like trying to kill the Napster guy, you know? And I remember them saying like, we had to do something because it's going to be like the wild, wild west. And then a few years later, in a short period, it changed everything.
I always say that was one of the music business's worst eras is instead of trying to kill Nick said Napster, Sean Fanning, and those guys. I think Sean Parker too.
It was Sean.
Yeah. They should have
joined
on the first thing smoking. Yep, and brought them to the office.
Like he's on to something.
Yeah, right. Said, yeah. What are y'all guys doing? Let's figure this out, and incorporate you into what we're doing. But like you said, the music business has a tendency to try to kill new things. As progressive as it's supposed to be, it has a tendency to try to kill new things instead of incorporating them.
Exactly.
And Napster was one of the, if they'd incorporated, I mean, who knows? Who knows what things would be now? But it came back to bite them.
Big time. That's just a short few years later. It blew up. Everything. It disrupted the music business.
Yeah.
I remember at the time, I guess it was like 99, 2000. Before then, record sales were 80% of a publishing company's revenue, like CD sales. And after that, no CD sales. It was a terrible time. You remember it was everybody, a bunch of layoffs, and it really disrupted the industry.
It really did. Like you said, it was different because people were buying hard products. You said CDs and vinyl sometimes, and going to the store, and all the ancillary businesses around it, like the truckers bringing the stuff in, and the manufacturers and the art people, and it killed all that stuff.
All of it. And what's so crazy is back then you would buy a CD and you owned it. Now we don't own any music.
Yep.
You buy a DVD, you own that movie. Now we don't own anything. We have more of it, but we don't own anything.
We don't own anything. Yeah, we don't have anything you can grab in your hand and say, "This is mine."
Yep.
So what was your last stop?
My last step was EMI.
Oh, EMI. Okay.
And then I tried management and managing producers and stuff. I worked with Shay Taylor, my cousin, for a while, who later
Okay.
worked with Beyonce. And I hated that too. I didn't like being on the other side of the desk.
Chasing people.
Yeah, it was just like, I didn't even know how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, when it came down to that, I was like, I guess this isn't for me anymore, because I don't even know how to chase people down and to kiss ass and do all the stuff that managers have to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the beginning, like if you have a huge artist, you're people kissing your ass. But if you have an artist that you're trying to get off the ground or it's a terrible position to be in.
Good luck, Yeah.
I didn't like not being, like, I was a check writer.
Yeah.
Before.
Yeah.
People
Not on the other side.
People respected me in a different way because, and then I heard horror stories later down the line of people who were not in my position and had to be on the other side, and people just being disrespectful and
people you thought you was cool with, all of a sudden they tripping,
Yeah. So I didn't like it. So if I don't like something, I don't excel in it. Some people, they can really excel in something just from doing it. I'm not one of those people. I have to like it or love it.
Be passionate.
I'm always blessed in doing things that I really love.
Yeah.
And I
tell me about this, your pivot.
Well, I don't even like to call it a pivot because it took a long time for me to get to that pivot. It was like a long, windy road. It was like this. It wasn't like a pivot like that. It was,
Yeah.
But, I kept, even though I didn't like the business anymore, it was all I knew. My identity was being Angelique Miles, music publisher, who had all this pedigree from all the successful signings I had. So I still tried to do it and get a job in a building, but all the doors were closed to me. And I still couldn't understand it because, like I said, because of my pedigree, all the people I knew, people who were running shit at the time, and still couldn't get back in. So, that's when the predators come out too. People who are coming to you saying, you're going to have this budget soon. We like to bring you in to this. I had at least 5 people come bullshit me with false promises and or wanting you to do some work without a budget. I'm like, how about you work out that budget part and then, So it was a lot of that and a lot of disappointments, a lot of, people you think not taking your calls anymore, people that, you've had, their families and you spent time with them, but, people that were friends of the job, not really. That was a hard pill to swallow. Like, these people aren't my friends. These people were friends of the job. So there was a lot of that. So, money was an issue, of course. So I had to do other things. Like, I got my real estate license. I got my insurance license. I tried to get jobs in other areas of entertainment. Nothing would pan out for whatever reason. And I remember the last time these guys came to me and were like, we have this budget of this. We just have to deal with this and we want to bring you on. It was like, they sent me a contract and everything. But of course it fell through because they were full of shit. So I was like, that was the last straw for me. So I was like, okay, self, what do you want to wake up and do every day? Because I'm like, I might as well start at the bottom because whatever I do next, it might as well be something I love because I'm starting at the bottom, whatever I do next. And I must say, and go back and say, like, during that time when I wasn't working, I was getting up every day and working out because it was the only thing I could control. I couldn't control when such and such called me back. I couldn't control anything else, but I could control my body. I could control what I was eating. At the time I was, maturing, my body was maturing. I was like, I'm not going out like this. I was like, I'm already feeling down and out. I'm not going to look down and out, down and out. If I look down and out, that would just take me down.
Yeah, it's over.
It's over. And I did have some dark thoughts back then because it's a very isolating period for me.
It is.
Because, everybody else is going on with their lives. They're traveling, they're, still doing the things I used to do. And I couldn't do any of it.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't do any of it. I couldn't pay my bills. I couldn't do any of the things. And it went on for a much longer time than I thought it would. But in the midst of it, I was still doing some things. Like I was still being invited to certain things. But I took odd jobs just to be able to work out. Like, okay, I'm going to go work at a bar studio so I can take free bar classes and still be in the city and get some energy. So anyway, I'm going through this, and I finally, I caught on to. No, what happened? I started doing CrossFit because I'd gone to the doctor, and up until that point, I'd only weighed under 150 pounds at 5'9". I go to the doctor and I was like 160 pounds. I was like, what? So I started doing CrossFit. I was like, I have to do something aggressive. So I started doing CrossFit, and the workouts was so crazy that I was like, somebody else should know I'm doing this. So I started posting my workouts before Instagram. It was like Twitter, Facebook.
Okay.
So I was just like, and people, it started resonating with people. They were like, you know what? Because we were on our 40s at the time, and it was like, I should get up and work out too. You motivated me to work out today. People started approaching me on the street. Like, wow. I follow you. I had like maybe 2,500 followers at the time, I remember. And this young lady approached me, and she was like, I follow you, and I love what you're doing. I was like, maybe I'm on to something.
Mm-hmm.
Instagram wasn't a thing yet. But when I got on Instagram, I, post my workouts. All my friends were like, why are you posting the food? Why do you keep taking selfies?
Because nobody knew what you were doing. Nobody
understood
knew
what I was doing.
Yeah, you were ahead of the curve.
Yeah. I was just like, whatever I'm doing. I saw people were making money. I didn't know how they were making money. I was like, I know there's a way for me to make money doing this. I don't know how yet, but I guess I'll figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And before long, a brand came to me, and they sent me a contract, and they would, we'd like you to post this for this amount of money. And I was like, oh, this is how people are making money on it.
Yeah.
So, it's only trickled in for a little while. And then right before the pandemic, it just started pouring in.
Started to take off.
All the brand partnerships started pouring.
So you were an early health influencer.
Fitness. It started out as fitness. It started out as fitness.
Did you realize you were an influencer? You were just kind of like, oh, I'm an influencer. I didn't even realize what I was doing.
It wasn't called influencing then. I don't know what it was called.
Yeah.
What was it called? I don't know if that was called anything. But I was just like, I just want to be able to work out and look good and maybe practice some other forms of self-care and share it with people.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, I was like, I'm just going to take classes all over the city, fitness classes, and share with my followers. Maybe they want to take, they want to do what I'm doing. But then it turned out to be like Dove and L'Oreal and all kinds of people started approaching me about brand partnerships. So it's expanded too much.
How are they approaching you? Are they hitting you in the DMs with like L'Oreal will just pop up, like I said, Dove will just pop up in your DM and like, yo, we want to.
No, they email me. I'd have my email address.
Oh, email. Okay.
And nowadays you could just press like everybody's email, especially if you have a professional page.
Yeah,
there's an email tab in your bio that people hit. So that's how they were reaching me.
Wow.
Reaching me directly, and I just had so many opportunities. It was overwhelming that I had to hire help and yeah. So, and I was like, to get paid to be myself is the
Yeah, it's a
ultimate blessing.
blessing. It's
Like
a
I just did
blessing.
a panel the other day, and I'm like, I don't even have to prep for this because I'm just talking about me.
Yeah. Yeah, you ain't
Like,
got to
how
do
do
no
you prep
homework.
for a panel? You're just talking about yourself, you know?
Yeah.
So in retrospect, I look at things like I wasn't supposed to be in the music industry or in entertainment anymore because I'm supposed to be doing what I'm doing now
Mm-hmm.
and something I enjoy, something that's easy to do because I really do get up every day and work out, and I like beauty products. I like skincare products. I like to dress up. I like to go out. All the things that, over 50, now it's an over 50 thing
Okay.
that people are interested in.
Wow. That's amazing that you kind of fell into this, because he was in a dark place,
I was in
and
a very dark.
it turned out to be the biggest blessing. Not the darkness of it, but just kind of having to move on turned out to be this big blessing.
Yes, absolutely. And I could do this till the wheels fall off.
Yeah, you could be 80 years old still working on it, and people.
Mhm.
You should work out somewhat at 80 years old if you're here, if you can. For your health.
There's a woman, her name is Train with Joan. She's in her 70s and she's amazing. She has like millions of followers because she changed her life around through weight training. And yeah, I'm gonna be doing this until I can't do it anymore.
That's good.
The older I get, the more value it has.
Yeah, yeah.
If you look a certain way, you take care of yourself a certain way. Because I'm like coming up on 60 now.
Hmm.
Next year, not this year, but yeah, it's like, yeah, I'm looking right now at all these. I got, I have to sift through all the beauty products and skincare products people send me and post them, and I love it.
Yeah,
People ask me
yeah,
like, "How does your skin look like that?" Because I use amazing
yeah.
products.
Top notch products that I get for free. You know what I'm saying? And I get not for free. You get paid to use them,
Yes,
which is even better.
yes, it's a. I mean, it's the stuff like I said I would have been doing no matter what my profession. Like,
Yeah.
when I was in music and stuff, I was working out. I was doing Lottie Burke method, and I was going to get facials at Mario Badescu, and I was trying different diets, Ayurvedic diet. I was doing vegan stuff before it was the vegan thing because I have a autoimmune condition called psoriasis.
Uh-huh.
So I've always tried to heal myself and try certain things. So it's always been a passion of mine, and to get to have the opportunity to make a living doing it is a
That's
huge blessing. I'm
amazing.
very grateful.
So do you participate in like BeautyCon and all that type of stuff, or no?
I haven't done BeautyCon.
Okay.
If they invited me, I would come. But the beauty stuff is just like I'm not a big makeup person. Let me tell you, I'm just getting into the makeup part of it because I get sent so much. I used to be that person who's like, I'm never wearing makeup to the gym. Now I wear a little bit of makeup to the gym because the makeup is just sitting here. I'm like, let me
Mm,
use this makeup.
yeah, yeah. Just taking up
So I'm like,
space.
let me put a little, and plus I'm always filming my workout, so it makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It makes sense. But not anything crazy, but I've really finally gotten into learning how to do makeup. And there's always a new thing or new way of doing things. So I'm always, practicing.
Yeah. It's so interesting how like with social media, and I don't know, fairly recently, I don't know how many years, how beauty and fashion and styling and all that have just become massive. I think as of now, culminating with the last Met Gala.
Yeah.
Like that, which is the biggest Met Gala media wise, and the Met Gala 2 days ago raised the most money they've ever raised.
Ever.
Yeah, which is crazy. So it's like the culmination of years ago, there used to be a bunch of kids. If you went on a Saturday afternoon, there would be a bunch of kids on what's called Lower Broadway, which is like Broadway, right below Houston Street.
Mm-hmm.
It was like all these kids just out there, like every Saturday afternoon. Obviously, it was a rain or something. It was a ton of kids, all like wearing this clothes and wearing this and that, and they would just be out there taking pictures of each other. And those kids are like the kids now. Like that was A$AP Rocky, and that was Virgil, and that was Luca, the kid that was in Grownish. Luca, forget his last name now, but all these kids now they're now like at the peak of it. The Quan Smith, all those kids were those people
before social media.
Who became,
they were called tastemakers back then.
They were called tastemakers, and they took it and ran with it, and to the point where Tiana Taylor, all those kids was out there. If you had somebody had a video, you'd see all those kids. They're like back then they're young, and now look at them. They're at the Met Gala raising the most money ever.
Yes, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful sight to see, and the fact that you can. Because at the time I started getting into it, I was probably one of the few people my age doing it.
But that's
and now there's so many women over 50 that are not playing out here. They're doing the damn thing. So actually it's changed a little bit for me because I didn't get into the reels thing as quickly because I was used to taking a couple pictures, writing a caption. But now it's all about this whole production.
Yeah.
So it's a little it's always evolving. So you gotta stay with the.
Where do you see it going next?
It's hard to see because what works for one person may not work for someone else.
True.
I've seen people grow on TikTok and Instagram in a year more than I've grown in 5. But that what they do wouldn't necessarily work for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I like, to stay at the pace I'm at, and I'm able to. I was just talking about this on a panel. I have 125,000 followers on Instagram, which is not a huge number. I'm slow to TikTok. I'm growing there, but I know I have to do better across different platforms. But it's a lot of work. I'm but I'm able to interact with my followers. I answer every DM, I answer every comment, questions. I try to answer everything, and so I kind of like the number I'm at. So I'm able to do that still and stay authentic.
See, I think you, again, I'm talking shit because I'm no social media expert, but I think somebody like you, somebody might have 1 million followers, but if you look at the analytics and stuff, you probably have much better engagement.
Yes.
Somebody might have 2 million followers, but not really. When they post something, they only get a few hits. Whereas when you post something, you get more hits because you engage with your people, and they know and you answer the DMs, which makes them keep coming back.
Yes, and there's value in that.
There's much, because I'd rather somebody like yourself. I'd rather somebody like yourself try to sell my product than somebody who has 2 million followers but doesn't really talk to the people.
Yeah, for that, I think when you get to those numbers, it's good for brand awareness.
Yeah.
But for actual use of the product, people like macro and micro influencers with the same, similar numbers to mine, I think do better. There are people who have less followers than I do who probably work more than I do. It's all on who the brand thinks, it's all on brand connection, who they want.
Yeah. So what's next for you?
I'm doing more things outside of social media.
Okay.
I'm doing a retreat next year.
Okay.
In Thailand.
Oh, okay.
It's a biohacking, longevity, but also restoration.
Okay.
Retreat for women over 50.
Okay.
Things are different for us. As much as I'd like to include my younger sisters, it's just really different for women over 50. We're dealing with different things going on in our bodies and our lives. We're dealing with elderly parents and kids, and it's just different at this age.
Yeah, different from a 25-year-old girl that's out here popping. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's not that we want to go to probably be in bed by 9.
Yeah, I'm tired.
Especially after laying out in the sun all day. I'll be
Yeah,
like,
I'm
I'm going
tired.
to
I'm
bed.
gonna get something to eat. I'm gonna go to bed. I'm gonna watch Netflix. I'm tripping.
Exactly. And fall
You
asleep
know?
watching that.
Exactly.
You
Well,
know.
thank you, Angelique.
Thank you. This is great. Well, I love you, Jeff. So
I love you too. You can catch Mixed and Mastered on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, or wherever